purred smoothly towards them. Sir Topham Hatt introduced him. "Here is Diesel. I have agreed to give him a trial. He needs to learn. Please teach him, Duck." "Good morning," purred Diesel in an oily voice. "Pleased to meet you, Duck."
Going into it, I expected Devious Diesel to be pretty simple. Get the Bachmann model, modify it a bit, and pretty quickly I should have a TVS Diesel model, right? Absolutely wrong. Little did I know it would take about 4 shells, several concept drawings, and ideas that really didn't go very far, and a lot of patience to finally make and finish my Diesel model. But in the end, I'd say it ended up quite worth it. So let's start from the beginning and I'll explain what I did to make this guy. Before anything, the faces that you're gonna see for Diesel were designed by the Chairlord and painted by Boldout95. These amazing faces alone already make this model pretty TVS oriented, but on the advice from Boldout95, I would also hollow out the windows on Diesel's cab. It really was as simple as a good X-Acto knife and a screwdriver. I would follow the X-Acto around the edges of the window itself, very carefully cut it out, use the very thin screwdriver to push out the panel, and then use sandpaper to help smooth it out. As you can see here, it is a bit rough, especially on the front windows, which honestly were probably the hardest part. But regardless of such, I'm still quite satisfied. The fact I was able to do this on the front is enough for me. Those windows are puny. But once I had everything cut out, next I would go to reprime the model. In all retrospect, I didn't really have to do this, but I wanted to see the overall shape of the windows themselves and make sure that I had everything right. After priming it the first time, I saw I had to sand it down a bit more. But after that, and priming it again, I then resprayed the body a matte black. This part ended up being a little harder than I anticipated. Normally for such I would use a Tamiya spray paint, but I had actually ran out of black, so instead I had to use Rust-Oleum, and that tends to dry a lot slower, as well as lay a lot thicker, so the process itself ended up taking a bit longer. I also had to spray in quite short bursts, but eventually the entire shell was black. I also should mention that the front and back buffer beams were masked up with tape, as to make sure I didn't accidentally spray these black or prime them. Lastly, I would add a glaze to Diesel's windows, and this may have been a lot simpler than you think. In my room I have a lot of toolkits, and most of the time these are made out of transparent plastic. So literally I just took my X-Acto knife, cut out little panels, weathered them a little bit, sealed it in with a coat of matte clear, and attached them to the inside. The matte clear made the windows harder to see through, and honestly I kinda prefer that. The motor to Diesel is quite visible without it, so this helps to hide that and overall give him a more grimy look. And once I had those attached to the front, sides, and back windows, Diesel was pretty much complete. However, I did want to weather him a little bit, so I used my Tamiya weathering kits, mostly the white, but as a lot of you guys know, when you go to seal that with matte clear, 9 times out of 10 it's gonna come off. So after the 6th or 7th attempt, I kinda just called it there and I'm gonna wait until I get my airbrush back. So as of now, I have a slightly weathered, but completed TVS custom of Devious Diesel. The chassis that he sits on is actually Paxton's old chassis, but I would repaint it by spraying it a matte black and then use some silver paint on his rods to give him that classic series look. There are some things I would still like to do to this model, for example, weather him a little bit more, but also flip his brake pipes. I haven't decided if I'm gonna give him hook and loop couplers or actual 3-links, as recently I've been using those, but I guess we'll see with time. And of course, this model still operates and runs smooth. Well, most of the time. Now, you may be thinking, what made this process so hard? Well, the first Railway Series Diesel I would make was honestly not that great of a model. I had another one after that I had repainted, but unfortunately it would fall off of my shelf and was pretty busted. There was another shell before this one, which unfortunately got rained on when I was trying to paint it black, so that caused the paint that was on it to bubble up and basically ruin the entire model. That sucked. And finally we arrive at the one that I have now. The only two to actually have open cabs were the one you see now and the one before this, and if you guys go to attempt such, it shouldn't take you, well, 4 shells. Hopefully, but make sure you're prepared and you shouldn't end up like me. At the end of it all, however, I have to say I'm quite satisfied. This is probably one of my favorite customs that I've ever done. And again, huge shouts out to the Chairlord and Boldout95. Without these two's help, this model would not look nearly as good. So with all of that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed my pain and suffering, but also how I made my custom TV series Devious Diesel. If you guys did, be sure to like and subscribe for even more train content. This is one of many customs that I hope to reveal pretty soon. The workbench has been a mess recently, I'll just leave it there. But if Diesel's assigned for anything, hopefully they'll all be pretty cool. So as always, thank you guys again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.